During my engagement celebration, my mother raised a toast to my sister, asserting she was worthy of my fiancé. At 18 I hit my limit. I quit. I moved out, put myself through school and built my entire life and career far away from them. And then I met Daniel. Dan, he was everything I never knew I needed. His kindness, his unwavering support, it was like breathing fresh air after being suffocated for years. 5 months ago he proposed and I said yes faster than he could finish the question. We decided to have an engagement dinner, a big one with both families. My sweet fiancé, bless his heart, even said it would be great and new to have my mother there. I should have seen the red flags, I really should have. The first hour at this incredibly posh restaurant actually went well. I was genuinely surprised when my mother gave a warm compliment about my outfit. But then Sophia arrived. Late, of course, because she was apparently negotiating a promotion in her power suit. The moment she walked in, I saw that familiar, sickening light in my mother's eyes. Sophia was back, and for the next 30 minutes, her latest accomplishments became the only topic of conversation. I really did, to steer the focus back to Daniel and our engagement, but my mother just kept circling back to Sophia. Then she stood up. My mother. She raised her glass and for a fleeting second, I actually hoped she was going to say something nice about me, about Daniel, about us. Instead she said, "Louis is great and I'm thrilled for him." Then, her eyes landed on Sophia and she finished with a laugh that felt like a punch to the gut. Too bad he met the wrong sister. My heart stopped. The joke, she claimed it was just a joke, but she kept going. She continued, right there at my engagement dinner, to say that Sophia was prettier, wiser, and more worthy of Daniel. She hoped Daniel knew what he was getting with me, implying no, outright stating that upgrading was possible. The silence that fell over the table was deafening. No one spoke. Across from us, Daniel's parents looked absolutely furious. Daniel himself seemed to shrink, like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. And Sophia? She just grinned, a smug, satisfied smirk, as if she completely agreed. My hands started to tremble, my cheeks burned with a heat that had nothing to do with blush. 26 years of rejection, of never being enough, washed over me in that single gut-wrenching moment. I stood up. My voice, surprisingly steady, cut through the tension. "Mother," I said, "I have something to say." 2 months earlier, when I'd set up her new phone, I'd found them. Her secret texts about me. Every single ugly, manipulative message. And right then, at that table, I started spilling. I exposed them one by one. My mother's face went white. She tried to interrupt, called me embarrassing. Sophia chimed in, saying I was just outperforming Daniel, whatever that even meant. My mom agreed, adding, "I don't know what he sees in you." Then I got to the piece de resistance, their planned strategy for that very night. Sophia's supper flirting with Dan, designed to turn his head. Both their faces crumpled. It was like watching a villain's mask fall off in real time. My mother stammered, claiming I'd misread everything. Sophia just looked cornered, saying I was flashy. Daniel, bless his absolute heart, stood up. He ordered them to leave. My mother, suddenly a sobbing victim, wailed that I was ruining the family. I just stared at her, my voice low and firm. "No, Mom," I said. "You damaged it. 26 years ago." The words hung in the air. "You always told me I was never good enough." As they stumbled out, Daniel's mom, Lillian, came around the table and hugged me tightly. She whispered, "You handled that better than I ever could have." What my mother didn't know, what no one knew, was that I had screenshotted every single one of those messages. Every single one. I sat in my car outside the restaurant for 20 minutes, the engine off, just staring at the prepared family group chat screenshots on my phone. Pressing send would be permanent. This whole meeting had made me shake, but paradoxically I felt clearer than I had in years. My hands were cold on the steering wheel, my breath fogged the glass. I reread the screenshots, every awful text there in black and white. My mother calling me embarrassing. Sophia saying I outperformed Daniel. Their black and white strategy for the night. Press send. The message, packed with betrayal, reached 39 relatives. Every angry conversation between my mother and Sophia, including the intention to flirt with Daniel, was there, screenshotted, timestamped. Instantly, red receipts started popping up. 1-3-7-15 phone messages beeped. The screen flashed relentlessly. I ignored the notifications piling up. 2 callers. I muted my phone and tossed it into the cup holder. A moment later, Daniel silently slipped into the passenger seat. He gently reached over, took my phone and softly turned it off. I sobbed and he just clutched my hand. His parents, who were just incredible, got us home safely. On the couch, wrapped in a blanket, I contemplated what I'd done as Lillian served me tea. She didn't ask questions, just sat beside me, gently circling my back. In the kitchen, Dan and his father chatted quietly, their voices a low rumble, not words. Lillian's mom was already settled in our guest room. "Tomorrow morning," Lillian said, "you can start your phone." The next morning I woke up to 215 notifications. 215. The number alone made my stomach clench. Lillian's mom, with her reading glasses perched on her nose, was already awake on the couch, sifting through the texts for me. She calmly told me which family members were supportive, and which were, well, attacking. Uncle Andrew wrote a long letter, admitting he'd always felt my mother treated me differently but never realized how horrible it was. He regretted not speaking up sooner. My Aunt Olivia called and we talked for an hour about my mother's abuse. Olivia said Mom always needed someone to degrade to feel superior, and that I was pre-birth objective, meaning she'd chosen me before I was even born. She recalled countless family gatherings where my mother would subtly criticize her food, her clothes, her spouse. Olivia stopped justifying my mother's actions and tearfully apologized for not protecting me, saying she should have been braver. My father's 3 cousins, all without Sophia, my grandmother, or my mother in their immediate circles, spoke up. They too remembered my mother's casual cruelty. My mother said I was lucky to have a job despite my poor performance, one relative texted. Another wrote, "My mother complained that I embarrassed the family by not being as accomplished as Sophia. The pattern of her cruelty was even more extensive than I'd ever realized." Then came my mother's text. "Not regret, no." She called me unappreciative. Claimed I humiliated her in front of the entire family. She demanded I delete the communications and apologize. She threatened to visit my house if I didn't respond. Daniel, seeing this, immediately changed our access code, and security was put on alert to block her if she showed up. He even called me while I was reading her texts, describing my mother's manipulative tactics to a T. Lillian texted Daniel to try a new tactic. Mom admitting fault and requesting a private conversation. Daniel recorded and showed me her response. Without replying, he blocked her number. He was assured. 3 days after the dinner, my father called. His voice was tired. He claimed my mother was emotional and just gave a bad dinner speech. He suggested family therapy, but I shot him down immediately. "I won't repair anything my mother doesn't want to fix." He was silent for a long moment, then just agreed and hung up. Daniel's best friend Ethan brought takeout that night. He told us Daniel's parents had alerted half his family to the turmoil. Ethan thought his mother's breaking touch was greatest due of her nasty sibling, and his validation coming from outside my family calmed me. Over dinner, Ethan even shared stories about his own mother's firm boundaries, making me laugh for the first time in days. 3 days after Ethan left, Lillian texted me. She wanted coffee. My mother had made excuses to keep us apart for years. But now Lillian offered to drive 2 hours to meet me at a little cafe near my flat. When I walked in, despite her age, she smiled, a genuine warm smile. She brought our lattes and we sat by the window. She told me she reached out after seeing everything in the group chat. She confessed that my mother had mistreated me as a youngster, and she herself had stopped attending family occasions 5 years ago because she couldn't stand it anymore. Her voice quietened as she apologized for not speaking sooner, claiming she was too young to discreetly question my mother at the time. She remembered a Christmas dinner when I was 12, and my mother spoke about Sophia's accomplishments for an hour without addressing me once. Lillian admitted she'd sobbed for me at home that night. She squeezed my hand across the table, calling me courageous for standing up, and spent 2 proud hours talking about what had transpired. She even shared her own rocky connection with her mother and how imposing limits had improved her life. We exchanged numbers, promising to communicate. She wanted in, she said, because my mother didn't restrict who I saw. Her support made the drive home feel lighter. Daniel and I were eating dinner when my phone started buzzing again. So much that I placed it face down. Daniel picked it up and read the alerts. His face tightened and he showed me the screen. Grandmother had written a lengthy defense of my mother. She claimed I was exaggerating, that I was too sensitive. She thought I was making a big deal out of the food and insisted my mother loved both daughters equally. She actually accused me of splitting the family for a mistake. Rapid responses followed. Uncle Andrew flatly stated he hadn't misunderstood the screenshots. Olivia announced she was fed up with supporting my mother's abuse. Someone I barely knew advocated forgiving my mother because family is essential. Another relative shot back that family doesn't tolerate abuse. The threads grew, more people joining. My Uncle James tried to calm everyone down, suggesting they relax before saying anything regrettable. Nobody listened. Old grudges and conflicts resurfaced, and the fighting escalated. Bad parenting was blamed. Someone even recalled a sad 9-year-old wedding. The discussion devolved into anger and blame. Daniel mercifully turned off my phone's alerts. "No reading tonight," he said. I felt ill knowing my grandma was protecting my mother after seeing what she'd witnessed. Daniel got takeout and we watched a movie, but I kept checking my phone. 4 days later I received a letter. My mother's handwriting on the envelope made my stomach drop, thicker than expected. Sitting on the couch I opened it. 6 pages of my mother's immaculate cursive, front and back, fell out. It started with her being disturbed that I wasn't calling her. She insisted I misinterpreted the dinner toast joke. She claimed I was misremembering my upbringing, that she'd always loved both daughters equally. She even tried to argue that helping me succeed was hard. She talked about helping me with schoolwork or driving me to soccer practice like it erased everything else. Sophia, she wrote, was worried I was killing our family. My mother considered me selfish and cruel for not forgiving her. The letter contained multiple alterations of reality. She never apologized. Not once for the dinner comments. She considered me spiteful and oversensitive. The last page said she would forgive me if I openly apologized to her and Sophia in the family group chat. Her gestures, she wrote, showed devotion unlike anything I'd ever written. Mom? After reading it twice, my hands shook with a furious energy. I just had to move. I grabbed my keys and told Dan I was going for a walk. He wanted to join me, but I needed privacy. I walked the block 3 times in the cold, letting the anger slowly morph into a cold clarity. My mom didn't recognize her error. The victim mentality was so deeply ingrained, it was worse with every letter. Later that night, Daniel found me on the couch, still on my phone. I sat next to him and he asked if I wanted to go away for the weekend. For a few days, he suggested, relax and don't check our phones. The constant alerts and family turmoil had fatigued me, and I agreed instantly. The next morning we packed up and drove 3 hours to a mountain B&B. It was small but lovely with hiking trails nearby. On day 1 as we walked through the woods, my family wasn't mentioned once. Emily, my new nickname for Daniel for some reason, pointed out unusual birds and plants. We sat on rocks beside a creek just listening. The second day we trekked to a valley-wide view. We ate packed sandwiches and watched the clouds. My phone stayed in my bag. I could focus without texts or ringing. And there, on that summit, seeing the vast countryside spread out before me, I had a revelation. I'd wasted so much energy trying to satisfy my mother. Every decision I made, I considered her opinion. Knowing she'd compare every success to Sophia hollowed them out. Wanting her approval had actually hurt my career. I finally realized she would never be satisfied with me. She would never see me well. Despite the initial agony of that thought, it was incredibly soothing. No more trying. Emily held my hand as we waited until sunset. The distance showed me that my mother's perspective didn't define me. Back home I activated my phone. 53 new posts. Most were from the family group chat, though my Uncle James had sent me some. He advised a family conflict therapist, saying if everyone sat down and talked honestly, we could resolve this. The notion bored me. I told him when I called back. I won't sit with Sophia or Mom. His voice was sad. Although families are hard, he hated seeing them break up. He knew I wasn't pulling things apart, but finally responding to my mother's lengthy behavior. He paused before saying, I understand. If I rethink, the invitation stands. He promised to always back me. I appreciated his effort, but mediation wouldn't work. Mom would just victimize herself again. James told me to take care of myself before we ended the call. Then, something unexpected happened. A stranger sent me an Instagram message. No profile photo, random username. I almost deleted it, but something made me read it. The letter indicated she'd heard from friends and wanted to reconnect. It was Meline, my dearest high school buddy. After graduation, she'd moved to college across the nation and we'd lost touch. Even though I hadn't thought about her in years, her name conjured up sleepovers and late-night talks. I messaged her back and we planned lunch. She chose a restaurant between our apartments. I entered and she rushed over and hugged me tightly. Her looks hadn't changed. Her laughter was still the same. We spent 3 hours eating and reviewing the past 8 years. Her job, her home, her dating life. And then, my mom was mentioned. Meline always believed my mother was mean even back when we were teens. She remembered my mother praising Sophia while ignoring me at home. She said, I placed second in school competitions. Meline said, Mom was disappointed I wasn't first like Sophia. Meline wanted to assist but wasn't sure how. My mother terrified her as a child. She regretted her timidity. It's possible she did nothing. 3-hour conversation, phone number exchange. I told her I'd talk this time. Reuniting with her was like rediscovering myself again. 2 days after lunch with Meline, a new Instagram user approached me. Text came in, Sophia is the victim. She claimed I'd turned the family against her and she'd never hurt me. She wrote that she'd followed our mother's example and didn't know what to do. I read them, expecting an apology or recognition for her actions. Instead, it was just excuses and blame. She even stated she was in treatment and working on self-improvement. She wanted our romance back. The tone was all wrong. She sounded like she was reading from a what to say to get what you want script. Her harm wasn't valued. Every interaction was saved in my phone's behavior folder. Account blocking. Another person wrote me within an hour with the identical profile photo. I blocked that one too. Sophia persisted, but I was done. That Saturday, Daniel's parents hosted dinner. His father arranged a magnificent meal and his mother made pot roast. After dinner, Lillian wanted to chat. We moved to the living room as Daniel and his father cleaned the kitchen. She grabbed my hand on the couch. "You are my family," she said, looking me straight in the eye, despite me. She claimed I was her daughter. Praise for my management made her cry. She said I established limits and stood up for myself, which inspired her. She knew how hard this was since her own mother was difficult. She vowed to always include me in their family. The pure acceptance pinched my throat. I wept. She hugged me. This is what motherly love should feel like. Support without limitations. Pride without comparison. Love without violence. Daniel and his dad watched us weeping. His father made a light-hearted joke about women and emotions. Before leaving, they hugged me and I felt a calm return. This was family. My family. My chosen family. Not my birth family. The next day, security contacts me at work. My heart raced, a promise of dissent. They said my mother wanted to meet me in the lobby. I took the elevator down and saw her, weeping dramatically in the waiting room. She was misbehaving. Everyone in the entryway watched her. As I came into view, she screamed that I wouldn't call back, that I was breaking her heart. I retreated. My voice was chillingly calm as I ordered her to go. She looked surprised by my sincerity. A security guard asked if anything was wrong. My mother's face hardened, cooling after her performance. She said I'd regret it. She thought I was hurting her and would understand, when I have kids. She turned towards the door, then yelled across the lobby that I was an unappreciative daughter. Everyone in the waiting room heard her. Shame warmed my face, but not for me. The security guy apologized and checked on me. I just nodded and went upstairs. My hands shook all afternoon. I was distracted at work. Mom had stopped work. She broke another line and it won't last. That night I sought therapy. Dr. Miller specialized in family and harmful connections. Her office, with cozy sofas and gentle music, opened that afternoon. The waiting room was serene. Dr. Miller, with stunning black hair and kind eyes, brought me into her office. She questioned my visit. After the engagement meal, I recounted my childhood. She listened, uninterrupted. When I finished, she nodded slowly. "Your mother," she said calmly, "is narcissistic. Some parents need a golden child and a scapegoat to feel in control. You did not cause this and you cannot solve it." Her professional approval calmed me. I wasn't insane. I wasn't overly sensitive. My mother abused me. Dr. Miller questioned my limits. I told her I was ignoring my mother's calls and avoiding family functions. She approved of these restrictions. She advised that my mother would likely escalate before accepting my boundaries. My mother, she explained, struggled with loss of control. We set weekly appointments. Leaving her office, I felt a strange improvement in my behavior. An expert thought I was all right. It mattered more than just thinking it. 3 days after my last therapy appointment, Olivia invited Daniel and me to dinner that Saturday. She expected it to be just her, Andrew, and their 2 kids. No conflict, just family. I agreed before I could overthink it. Daniel drove us to their suburban home on Saturday. My hands trembled as we entered the driveway. I trusted Olivia, but past experiences made me uneasy. At the first family meeting since the engagement dinner, Andrew opened the door and hugged us warmly. Teens Chloe and Jake waved from the living room. The house smelled like chicken and garlic. Olivia hugged me longer after washing her hands in the kitchen. She whispered, "Thanks for coming." Dinner in her house had never felt so natural. We discussed school, jobs, and kids' sports. My mother and Sophia were disregarded. Nobody compared us or made backhanded remarks. Olivia held up her dessert wine. "As expected in the restaurant," she said, "I want to celebrate your engagement." She looked at Daniel. "He's lucky to have you," she told him. Then, turning to me, "You deserve someone who sees your worth." Jake and Chloe sipped Coke. My throat tightened and I blinked desperately to stop the tears. This is what family should feel like. During the week, other family members started interacting more. Isabella, my second cousin, emailed me about her mother in detail. She alleged her mother humiliated her and favored her brother. We chatted for 2 hours over coffee. She understood the strange embarrassment of separation, even if your parents mistreated you. Her experience 5 years ago led her to happiness after leaving relationship mending. Both parties exchanged numbers and agreed to talk. My dad's uncle texted me support. My old images got heart emoji comments from 2 additional relatives. I was developing a family that appreciated me. Not the backup daughter. It was like beginning over but better. It's great. My family likes me. The bar was low. My phone rang while I was preparing breakfast. Caller ID revealed my grandmother's number. I almost didn't reply, but curiosity triumphed. She spoke shortly after I responded. She worried about my mother's health. My mother, she said, had seen a doctor for stress-related chest pain. My grandmother's voice broke as she accused me of not forgiving. I breathed deeply and spoke softly. I'm not accountable for my mother's health. Stop endangering my health. My grandmother gasped as if I'd uttered something terrible. She called me cruel and said, "Families forgive." I suggested her family respect each other. Screaming, she asked how I had gotten so chilly. I learned limitations from her treatment, I said, not coldness. I disconnected before she could continue. My hands shook, but I was pleased with myself. Daniel and I read wedding magazines at our kitchen table. I cried when his parents offered to fund our wedding. We started listing guests. Daniel recorded family and friends. Olivia, Andrew, Lillian, my father, and others who had extended real support. The list excluded my mother. And Sophia. I granted Dan's request to take over. He squeezed my hand and whispered, "Okay." We counted names and chose 40 guests. Dan asked if I minded. Yes, I said, it feels right. They cared about us. Not sad. Choosing felt strong. I wasn't inviting people out of duty or fear. I was picking who would truly celebrate with us. My work phone got an email alert. I'd forgotten to disable Sophia's work email. Unknowingly, I opened the "I'm sorry" subject line. She described her treatment in 3 paragraphs. She recognized our mother's bias made her rely on being the greatest at everything. She thought she never learned real relationships because she wanted our mother's approval. She would like to be sisters and friends again. I read it twice. The full email discussed her issues. She recounted her pain, her treatment, her revelations. But for certain actions she never apologized. Her smile disappearing when Mom said, "I'm not good enough." No one claiming she'll flirt with Daniel. The email victimized her, not me. I ended the email without reply. I rejected her closure because she wanted it. At my next session, Dr. Miller and I wrote my mother a letter. She called it a boundary letter. It needed few tweaks to be perfect. The note added, "I will not have contact with my mother until she acknowledges the specific harm she caused throughout my life." It listed examples without being cruel. It said, "I need her to stop blaming me for the consequences of her own actions." It states clearly that I'm not asking for an apology that shifts blame or makes excuses. 1 page. Dr. Miller nodded while reading. "Clear and strong without being harsh," she said. Signing followed printing. I mailed it certified so my mother couldn't say she never got it. The cashier requested insurance. I nearly laughed. No insurance covers that product. My mother replied 3 days later, but not in writing. She went to Facebook. She posted about being a dedicated mother punished for adoring both girls equally. She claimed some kids don't understand parental sacrifices. For unknown reasons, her heart was broken. Without context, it garnered 20 likes, 12 comments. Family members who missed the first group chat contacted me after viewing the post. I sent them screenshots of my mother's and Sophia's texts. And then the boundary letter. Within an hour, 3 relatives said they had no clue things were so awful. No more excuses for her behavior. After 6 hours, Mom deleted the Facebook post. Just in case I'd screenshotted it. Daniel advised leaving work early that Friday. I must arrive at 5 without explanation. I was scared about my 4:30 homecoming. I arrived and noticed him dressed beautifully and smiling oddly. We went after he advised I change into something comfy. When queried, he claimed our destination was surprising. We arrived at his parents' 20 minutes later. There were several automobiles in the driveway. Daniel opened my door and showed me the backyard. Trees, a food and drink table with string lights. Olivia, Andrew, and their kids were there. Lillian existed. Dan's friend Ethan brought his girlfriend. My father sat at the table looking uneasy. His mother hugged me when Dan's parents visited. She claimed Daniel wanted a family-friendly engagement celebration. Everyone raised glasses as Daniel's father toasted new beginnings. Olivia applauded my womanhood despite everything. Watching me set boundaries and choose myself has been inspiring. Applause and tears. It was my first time getting praise without comparisons. I expected difficulties when my supervisor called Monday morning. Instead, she promoted me to senior analyst. Get promoted in office. She claimed leadership and perseverance. I thanked her and worked without flying. Starting with Daniel and his parents. Daniel called and said, "We're celebrating tonight." His mother was in tears, so proud. At my desk with my phone, it hit me. I never even considered calling Mom. Telling her positive news is harder. Sadness is unpredictable. My mood improved. Living without her viewpoint hurt less than I imagined. Lillian texted, ordering coffee. I accepted and we met near her office. She commanded and sat serious. Sophia, Lillian explained, had asked her to limit dialogue. Lillian had promised Sophia to inquire without pressuring me. Looking at me, she asked, "I may never be ready." That option was accepted by Lillian, nodding. She'll reject Sophia without shaming me. I appreciated that she respected my decision rather than forgiving relatives. Lillian gripped my hand across the table. She supported dissolving familial bonds. 2 weeks later, my dad invited me to coffee. He claimed my mother didn't know he was calling and wanted to chat alone. We met alone across town. As I entered, he seemed older, sitting at a corner table. Slouchy shoulders, new eye wrinkles. He stood when he saw me and we awkwardly hugged before sitting. I usually say okay when he asks how I'm doing. His coffee was stirred calmly without adding anything. Finally lifting his head, he apologized. He regretted not protecting me more as a child. "My mother's rage," he said, his voice heavy, "is draining and he can't ignore it anymore." A fatigued guy said it. He thought saying this was theft. I don't know what to say after waiting my whole life for him to confess. His words dulled me, didn't relieve me. Apologizing didn't help. "You're more accountable than I expected," I told him, "but it doesn't erase my past or years of comparisons and put-downs." Avoiding major matters, we spoke about minor things for another hour. As we parted, I declared I'd date him if he respected my rules, not talking about my mother or letting him reconcile. He accepted instantly, almost nervously, like he needed permission to date me without her. Our monthly coffee meetups are simple, although far apart. Our relationship is more honest. I felt uncomfortable driving home, like I'd accepted something unnecessary. Next morning, my grandmother messages. Writing her long formal statement probably took an hour. She warned me about mistreating my mother and prohibited me from family trips. She does not consider a daughter who openly humiliates her mother and refuses to apologize her grandchild. She mentions my holiday prohibitions, including guest list removal. I reread the message, expecting pain, but relief flooded me. I was excluded from terrible happenings. My mother commended Sophia's thinness and condemned my weight over Thanksgiving. Sophia received jewels and elegant outfits for Christmas mornings while I received socks. Easter brunches with my grandma, who asked why I wasn't married and praised Sophia. I can skip it all now without remorse. I copy and email Daniel the message with the description. "I guess we're having our own holidays now." He quickly replies. His parents already invited us to everything and we're going to start our own traditions. I quiet my grandma and eat breakfast, feeling lighter than in weeks. Daniel and I researched wedding sites next Saturday. 3 attractive but unpleasant sites were visited. Next, we visit a little garden behind an ancient city building. The owner showed us around and I fell in love. Stone paths link rose arbors and flower gardens. An intimate 50-person patio with string lights amid trees. Nice and cozy. However, my mother wanted huge settings. He feels Emily holding my 5-month reservation and deposit. Owner expects a beautiful wedding. On the way home, Emily advises bringing only relationship supporters. No obligation invitations or embarrassing relatives, only those who arrived. Fun replaces stressful wedding planning. Who we want is on our lunch napkin list. His list includes my dad, Aunt Olivia, Uncle Andrew, Lillian, Meline, Chloe's relatives. I like all 40 names I'll choose. A mother's friend is in the vegetable department next Tuesday. She smiles as she approaches me before I change aisles. She inquires about my well-being in that gossip-gathering voice. I assure her I'm great, but she stops my cart. My mother is upset over the engagement supper, she adds. She regrets kids not valuing parents. She stares at me like I should apologize or explain. Instead, I look her in the eye and tell her my mother destroyed my heart for 26 years, and one poor dinner doesn't compare. She should ask my mother why she said my sister deserves my fiancé more if she's worried about her feelings. She opens her mouth but says nothing. I pass her with my cart without apologizing or comforting her. Shopping makes my hand shake with delight, not guilt. Learning guilt-free defense. I inform my therapist about the grocery store event and my father's call during my next appointment. Her patience in asking how I feel about losing my mother forever. Perhaps I never needed a mother, I mused. She agrees that I'm mourning the relationship I needed, not the one I had. Despite missing my ideal mom, she says the real connection was dreadful. The distinction clarifies things. I waited a lifetime for ideal motherhood. Never would. The mother I needed never existed. My trust in her change is fading. Hope slows me. My therapist wonders about not expecting change. Similar to my life without her judging my value or happiness. The session feels like I dropped something heavy I didn't realize I was carrying. That weekend, Meline invited me to her friends. She asked me to supper with friends she likes. I agree. However, I'm terrified to encounter family issue experts. I discover 6 ladies our age in her flat. No one asks about my family or bad things when Meline introduces me. Work, TV, and travel are discussed during dinner. One woman joked about her lousy work, another about marathon preparation. Their interest in my profession and wedding is genuine. No one vets me or needs evidence. We converse freely and I realize I've been so secluded by family strife for years that I forgot about friendships. I'm known as me, not as the backup daughter or the girl whose mother hates her. 3 new tunes and 2 for brunch next weekend are my takeaway that night. I text Meline to thank her, and she says she's delighted I came and her friends liked me. Although basic, it helps me live independently from my family. Monday morning brings a large flower arrangement to my office. My coworkers gather as I read the card. The blatant untruth. She forgives me in my mother's handwriting. Makes me smile like I did something wrong. She pardons me like she's better for ignoring my wrongdoing. My coworker asks how I'm doing, and I tell her these flowers are from someone who doesn't forgive. My office is 2 blocks from the nearest nursing home. I offer their activities coordinator a flower during lunch. Excited, she believes others would welcome fresh flowers in the common area. I don't call her SMS mom to say I got them. My response and thank you card are missing. Silent responses are powerful. Daniel asks whether my mother sent anything else that night. I suggest flowers. He shakes his head, amazed she still doesn't understand. I think she knows now. She refuses. Not comprehending is different from my mother's unwillingness to adapt. Daniel's mother calls 2 weeks later to invite us to supper. We find his aunt, uncle, and cousins. His mother requests that they introduce me as their daughter-in-law at a family gathering. She wants everyone to know of their excitement for me. I become furious because the invitation signifies familial acceptance I've always desired but never received. Her attention is appreciated. 3 weeks later, Daniel's extended family excitedly welcomes me to the reunion. Grandma hugged me and said she'd heard good things about me. His cousins want wedding photos and venues. His aunt draws me aside and says she sees how happy I make Daniel, which is all that counts to his family. Nobody asks about my relatives. Daniel likes me and I'm kind, so they accept me. The afternoon was spent laughing and conversing with my supporters. Daniel adds, his family thinks I'm great. As we depart that night, my family finally wants me. I realize I haven't checked my phone for my mother or Sophia's texts in days. In the afternoon at work, without warning, my months-long monitoring ended. Checking my phone every morning prepared me for manipulation or guilt. Today I check my messages anytime I want without alerts. Telling my therapist that night makes her grin. She adds, this is what peace feels like and I should pay attention to how different my life is without their toxicity. I remark, it's like breathing better. This reliably eliminates stomach knots. Feels like savoring amazing things without spoiling. My therapist says, I've done the hard work of setting boundaries and now I'm experiencing the reward of that work. Peace doesn't promise no issues, just that my predicament ended. As I drive home, I admire my growth and lighter life. Olivia calls 2 weeks later to ask me to dinner. She claims only she, Andrew, and a few family members will always support me. She may develop a family custom that values connections. I want to come. She's excited. Saturday night supper at her house. Found Lillian and 2 more relatives I haven't seen in years. Everyone embraced and complimented me for defying my mother. We eat lasagna and garlic bread without talking about Sophia or my mother unless it supports my boundaries. Olivia raises her glass and offers quarterly meetings. Respectable family. We all agree and I discovered something superfluous. Family dinners should feel this. Instead of fretting and comparing, laugh. 3 days later, Daniel and I celebrate our first year. At our first date restaurant, he orders the same. He contemplates my modifications over dessert. He liked me more after seeing me stand up for myself at the engagement dinner because of my strength. I told him I worried imposing limits would alienate people but strengthen relationships. I appreciate his help. He grabs my hand across the table and says, that's exactly what happened. Protecting myself didn't cost me love. It just cleared out the fake love to make room for the real thing. A week later, distant relative Isabella reaches me on Facebook. Since she lives 3 states away, we only see her at major family reunions. After hearing her story through the family grapevine, she wanted to contact my mother. Her family has always prioritized her brother and ignored her. She seeks advice. I address treatment restrictions and accepting you can't please everyone. After an hour of talking, she thanks me for being honest about how hard it is. Helping others with my grief is unexpectedly significant. At our next meeting, my therapist grins and adds, "This is part of my healing too." My father calls about coffee days later. Sitting, he looks afraid and fatigued. My boundary letter helped him realize his treatment-induced silence. He claims he normalized my mother's behavior for decades. He admits to not protecting me as a child. I respect his responsibility, but we can't undo the past. Our weekly coffee dates will continue if he doesn't call my mother. He agrees and we discuss our gardens over coffee. Sophia delivers my work address 2 weeks later. Final message almost gets deleted without reading, but curiosity wins. She won't contact me since she knows I don't want a relationship. She wishes me happiness and moves on. No apologies for her actions. I hope it works. After reading twice, I delete without reacting. I'm not responsible for her joy or closure. Her inability to apologize shows her shift. The wedding guest list takes up Sunday afternoon for Dan and me. We reviewed everyone after avoiding it since it appeared complicated. Last list has 42 persons. His family, my father, Olivia, Andrew, Lillian, a few supporting relatives, our close friends, and my therapist who helped me heal are invited. Dan finds the list interesting. They picked us, not visitors. The list looks right and I don't feel terrible about missing somebody. I write wedding vows next week. Genuine promises, building a respectful, loving family, selecting each other daily and improving ourselves are my topics. As I read them, Daniel cries during rehearsal dinner practice. After I finish, his parents hug me, and his mother says she's honored to be in my new family tale. Father of Chloe says they've always wanted a daughter and are pleased it's me. His family accepts him differently than mine, which surprised me. Chloe's mother contacts me unhappy 3 weeks before the wedding. She says, "My mother wrote to their house to persuade me to invite her to the wedding." Page after page, the letter describes her suffering and why she should be my mother. Her mother feeds me sentences over the phone, twisting them. We thank her for telling me and decide she'll write back to not influence us. Chloe's mother will reinforce my limits tomorrow. His family defends my choices without my request, which I appreciate. Days later, Lillian offers wedding day motherly duties. She pledges to handle my mother's feared visit. Dan and I discuss it and hire venue security. Wedding security stated, "Unwanted guests are more often than people realize and will make sure no one crashes who isn't on our list." Being safe allows me to enjoy my wedding without worrying about my mother. Later that night, Lillian texts me that she'll always support me and I believe her. I wake up thrilled the week before the wedding, not nervous. When I get ready for work, I realize I'm unprepared for anything to go wrong or someone to destroy my day. In afternoon therapy, my therapist stated that this happens when you're unprepared for criticism or rejection. She says, "I've done the hard work of removing toxic people from my life. And now I get to experience what peace actually feels like. I'm marrying someone who loves me exactly as I am. I'm surrounded by people who celebrate me instead of tearing me down. And I don't have to perform or prove my worth to anyone." The relief of that realization makes me emotional in the best possible way. Olivia's house smells like vanilla and flowers when I arrive for the bridal shower. The living room is packed with women who have shown up for me, not out of obligation but because they actually want to celebrate. Lillian hugs me at the door and whispers that she helped Olivia plan everything. And I can already feel tears starting. Chloe's mother is here with 2 of his aunts, and they wave from the couch where they're chatting with Meline. My cousin Isabella from my dad's side brought her daughter, and even my therapist accepted the invitation, which makes me feel seen in a way I never expected. Olivia has set up games and decorations, but what hits me hardest is that nobody here has ever made me feel like I wasn't enough. The shower starts with everyone sharing a story about me and I brace myself for the usual backhanded compliments, disguised as praise, but Lillian goes first and talks about the time I stood up to a bully in middle school who was picking on a younger kid, and how that moment showed her I had more courage than most adults she knew. Meline tells everyone about how I helped her through her parents' divorce by just listening without judgment. And Chloe's aunt mentions how Daniel lights up every time he talks about me. Each story reveals qualities I didn't know other people noticed. Strengths my mother never acknowledged because she was too busy comparing me to Sophia. By the time we get to the gift opening, I'm crying happy tears and Olivia hands me tissues while laughing. The gifts are thoughtful and personal, things chosen because people actually know who I am. Then Chloe's mother stands up and asks if she can give me something special. She pulls out a delicate silver bracelet with tiny charms, and her voice shakes a little as she explains that it belonged to her own mother. She says she's been waiting for the right person to give it to, someone who would appreciate not just the jewelry but what it represents. She fastens it around my wrist and tells me it's my something borrowed. But really it's about welcoming me into their family officially. I lose it completely and hug her while everyone else gets teary too. This is what it feels like to be chosen and valued, to receive love without waiting for the criticism that always followed it in my original family. The shower wraps up with cake and more laughter. And as people leave, each one hugs me and tells me how happy they are for my wedding. Driving home, I keep looking at the bracelet and thinking about how different this celebration was from anything my mother ever hosted for me. 2 days before the wedding, my phone rings while I'm confirming final details with the florist. It's my father and my stomach tightens automatically, even though we've been doing better. He asks if I have a minute to talk and I step outside onto the balcony. He says he's calling to confirm he's still walking me down the aisle, which we already discussed. But then his voice gets quieter. He tells me he knows he can't make up for all the years he stood by while my mother tore me down, but he wants to be part of my future if I'll let him. He says watching me set boundaries and build a life without my mother's toxicity has made him realize how much damage he allowed by staying silent. I tell him yes, he can walk me down the aisle. And while our relationship will never be what it could have been, I appreciate his effort to do better now. He thanks me and his voice cracks a little. And after we hang up, I sit on the balcony for a while thinking about forgiveness and second chances. I'm not ready to forget everything, but I'm willing to let him try. The morning of the wedding, I wake up feeling calm instead of anxious. Dan already left for his parents' house where he's getting ready with the groomsmen. And Lillian and Meline arrive at my apartment with coffee and bagels. They help me shower and start on my hair, and the whole process feels easy and fun. We laugh about Lillian's disaster of a first date last month and Meline's new puppy who keeps eating her shoes, and there's no underlying tension or competition. When it's time to put on my dress, they both help with the tiny buttons down the back. And when I finally look in the mirror, I feel beautiful without needing anyone to tell me I am. The dress fits perfectly, and the bracelet from Chloe's mother catches the light. Lillian takes a million photos and Meline gets emotional, and I realize this is what getting ready for your wedding should feel like. No one is comparing me to anyone else or pointing out flaws or making jokes at my expense. We're just 3 women celebrating a happy moment and it feels completely right. The ceremony venue is exactly what Daniel and I wanted. A small garden with flowers everywhere and chairs set up for our 40 guests. I wait in the back room with my father while the music starts, and he adjusts his tie nervously. When it's time to walk down the aisle, he offers his arm and we step out into the sunlight. Daniel is standing at the front with the officiant, and the second he sees me, tears start running down his face. My father walks slowly like he's trying to make the moment last, and halfway down the aisle, he leans over and whispers that he's proud of me. For once, I believe a family member's compliment without analyzing it for hidden criticism or waiting for the other shoe to drop. When we reach the front, my father hugs me before handing me off to Daniel, and I can see he's crying too. The ceremony itself is simple and perfect. The officiant talks about love and commitment, and then Daniel starts his vows. His voice shakes as he promises to always see my worth, even when I struggle to see it myself, to be my family when my original family failed me, and to spend every day proving that I deserve to be loved exactly as I am. By the time he finishes, half the guests are crying and I'm barely holding it together. I manage to get through my own vows about building something better together. And when the officiant pronounces us married, Daniel kisses me and everyone applauds. The reception is in the same garden under string lights that make everything glow. We eat and talk and dance, and Andrew stands up to give a toast. He talks about how the strongest families are the ones we choose, not just the ones we're born into, and how watching me set boundaries and build a life on my own terms has inspired other family members to examine their own relationships. He says, "This room full of people who actually love me is more like family than any holiday gathering ever was." And several people nod in agreement. When Dan and I dance to our first song, I realize I'm not thinking about who's missing from the room. I'm not scanning for my mother or Sophia or wondering if they'll show up to ruin things. I'm fully present with the people who showed up, the ones who proved their love through actions instead of just words. My mother's absence doesn't diminish the joy at all. If anything, it protects it and lets me enjoy the day without bracing for criticism. At the end of the night, Chloe's parents find us by the cake table and pull us both into a hug. His mother says she didn't just gain a daughter-in-law today. She gained a daughter, and the distinction matters more than I can explain. His father says they're proud to call me family, and I thank them for accepting me so completely. I'm building a new family story where I'm valued and celebrated, where my worth isn't dependent on comparison or competition. And my mother's narrative about me being the backup daughter has no power here. Daniel and I say goodbye to the last guests and head to the hotel where we're staying before our flight tomorrow. And I feel lighter than I have in years. On our honeymoon in Hawaii, Daniel and I spend the first few days just relaxing on the beach and not thinking about family drama. But one evening while we're watching the sunset, we start talking about the future and what kind of parents we want to be someday. Daniel says he wants our kids to feel equally loved and supported. And I agree immediately. We talk about how we'll never compare siblings or play favorites, how we'll celebrate each child's unique strengths instead of ranking them against each other. I tell him, our children will never wonder which one is loved more and will break the cycle of favoritism and comparison that my mother created. Turning my pain into a promise to do better feels like the ultimate victory over my mother's legacy. Like I'm taking all that hurt and transforming it into something protective and healing for the next generation. Somewhere during the honeymoon, I realize I've stopped defining myself in relation to Sophia or my mother. When I think about who I am, I don't automatically compare myself to my sister or measure my worth by my mother's standards. I'm not the backup daughter anymore. I'm just myself and that's enough. The voice in my head that used to sound like my mother's criticism has gotten quieter, replaced by my own voice telling me I'm worthy exactly as I am. I look at Daniel sleeping beside me one morning and think about the life we're building together, and I feel grateful for every hard decision that led me here. Setting boundaries hurt and cost me relationships, but it also freed me to become someone I actually like. 3 months pass after the wedding, and I'm sitting at a coffee shop when my phone rings with my father's number. I answer and hear his voice, quieter than usual, telling me he needs to talk. He says he's moved into a hotel temporarily and separated from my mother. The words hang in the air between us for a moment before he explains that watching me build a life without her toxicity made him realize how much her behavior affected his own happiness. He sounds tired but also relieved, like he's been carrying something heavy for years and finally set it down. I tell him I'm not going to pressure him about what he decides to do long term, but I'm glad he's taking care of himself. We talk for another 20 minutes about nothing important, just normal conversation without the weight of my mother's presence influencing every word. When we hang up, I sit with my coffee and realize this is what happens when you stop accepting cruelty as normal. Other people start to notice it too. The following week, I have my regular therapy appointment, and my therapist reviews the progress I've made over the past several months. She suggests we move to monthly sessions instead of weekly because I've built such a strong foundation of self-worth. She reminds me that healing isn't a straight line, and I'll probably still have hard days, but the work I've done means my mother's voice in my head doesn't control me anymore. I can hear criticism without believing I deserve it. I can set boundaries without drowning in guilt. I can accept love without waiting for the conditions that come after it. I leave her office and walk to my car, feeling proud of how far I've come from the woman who used to apologize for existing. November arrives and Daniel and I decide to host our first holiday dinner in our apartment. We invite his parents, my father, Olivia, Andrew, Lillian, Meline, and Ethan. I spend the morning cooking while Dan sets the table, and when everyone arrives, the apartment fills with voices and laughter that feels genuine. Nobody makes comparisons between me and anyone else. Nobody gives compliments with hidden insults attached. Olivia brings a pie and hugs me in the kitchen, telling me how happy she is to see me thriving. My father sits on the couch talking to Chloe's dad about golf, and the conversation is easy and comfortable. Ethan tells a story about Dan's college years that makes everyone laugh, and Meline helps me carry dishes to the table. We eat and talk and someone suggests a game after dinner, and the whole evening feels warm and safe. This is what family is supposed to feel like. People who show up because they want to, not because they have to. People who celebrate you instead of tolerate you. I look around the table at faces that chose to be here and realize I finally have what I always wanted. A year passes since the engagement dinner that changed everything. I wake up next to Daniel in the apartment we share and think about how different my life looks now. I have a husband who loves me without conditions or comparisons. I have in-laws who treat me like their actual daughter instead of someone they're stuck with. I have a chosen family of relatives and friends who celebrate my wins and support me through hard days. But most importantly, I have my own approval. I don't need my mother to validate my worth anymore because I know it myself. Her opinion used to define everything about how I saw myself, but now it's just noise I don't have to listen to. The freedom that comes from that realization is worth every uncomfortable conversation, every boundary I had to set, every relationship I had to let go of to protect my peace. I'm not the backup daughter anymore. I'm just me and that's enough. Have you ever found yourself caught in a family dynamic where you constantly felt like you weren't enough? Or maybe you've had to make tough decisions to protect your own peace. I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. You might be surprised by how many of us have walked a similar path.